So here to introduce our digital humanities speaker is our amazing Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Peg McCarthy.
Amazing. I don't get that every day. Thank you. Well, good morning, and let me add my welcome to campus and to the first Canisius Innovation Conference. We are very excited about this and thrilled to have so many participants here with us today. So welcome, and thank you very much for attending. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the next speaker, Ben Dunkle. He will be talking primarily about WordPress. You can see he's getting set up even as I speak. Ben is a creative artist, a designer, an innovator, and I'm proud to say, a very highly regarded member of the Canisius faculty. He's currently an associate professor. He's been with the Canisius community here now since 2007. He's an expert in designing and developing complex web-based tools and systems. He's contributed to numerous interactive projects, designed and coded multiple web-based applications, created custom logos, fonts, icons, and graphical assets that are used now on countless websites. He's built an extensive educational curriculum geared toward educating future web designers and developers. He's a well-known participant in the open source software movement and is part of the core design team for WordPress.org, hence his presentation. I'm sure you will enjoy this session very, very much, so please join me in welcoming Ben Dunkle.
Thank you, Peg. So I'm going to start by giving you an overview of what my presentation is going to entail, and then we'll dive in. I've got a link down at the bottom there where you can get the slides, and there's also some notes on there too, and I may put some more things in there. So if you can just jot that down, that letter with a Q, that weird one, should probably use a different font there. But anyways, trying to adjust this a little bit more. Okay, so my title of my presentation is Inside WordPress, and I think that's an appropriate title because I've basically my head has been inside of that WordPress universe for the last, at least 10 years. And through that time, I've really gotten to know not just the program WordPress, but also the community in a really fundamental way. So hopefully I can express that experience to you guys today. It's a little strange on this presentation. I'm going to just scroll through these slides. So if you see a little bit that's further down, don't read it. It's going to be a spoiler. All right. So as we were saying, I am a visual person. I consider myself an artist, although I wish I could have more shows as an artist and that sort of thing. So if you have any art galleries that need artwork, let me know so I can have a show with them. And I'm always looking for that kind of outlet to get my work shown. Since I've been interested in art, I've always loved the process of making art. And not just kind of coming at a piece of artwork, with a very open approach and sort of making a big mess, but having a set of instructions that I can follow. Kind of counterbalances my other side of my personality, which is kind of scatterbrained and a little absent-minded. So when I can bring in some kind of a process into my art making, I really enjoy that. And this kind of came to fruition through printmaking when I studied that throughout college. All these presses and processes and papers and chemicals and these kinds of things really appealed to me for that reason. Another reason they were appealing was their technology, that these things would get better over time. If you look at history, you can see the early presses and then innovations that were done to make them better. And you say better, well, making it cheaper to produce printed elements, but also higher quality stuff, and making it more profitable, but also appealing to people's desire for things to look better, to look prettier and more beautiful and more appealing. And then finally, I've always been, part of my artistic interests include media, that I want my art, I want my stuff I create to be distributed to the widest audience possible. And I thought through printmaking that enables that outreach by being able to mass produce a single image and then distribute it to a wide audience. And that's why, I'm going to keep my watch here. Yeah, okay. And that's why I got interested in WordPress. It was very similar to my background and my interest in printmaking. In each of those ways, it has a similar process that there's a step-by-step approach to it. You can do things the right way, you can do things the wrong way, but you still have to follow instructions to get it to work, and that was appealing to me. I really liked the technology of WordPress, that it started off as a very basic thing, but over time, parts were added to it. Things were built upon previous things, and a whole was eventually created from a group of parts. And then, last of all, the media of WordPress, that the messages that you can create with WordPress are accessible to everybody who's on the web. So that mass communication portion was also there. So that was sort of a natural way for me to go in the digital world after being in such an analog place for so long with printmaking. At the heart of WordPress is the post, and the post is a piece of content that has a timestamp on it that is related to a specific point in time, and we've been doing this forever. People have always written in diaries and journals and dated things to record events and things that have happened, and there's never going to be. That's not going away. People have a deep desire to record their lives. And so this idea of the post is something that's very, very much at the heart of WordPress. So when computers became really prominent, people wanted to post. They wanted to go on their computers that they just bought and write some stuff, maybe a blog, a diary. Blog wasn't really invented very early at the time, but just to put something on the web that was a record of something, an event that they've been through. And it was very difficult. To post onto a web page, people could type up a Word document, print it, and then make a bunch of copies, maybe email it to some friends. But to really get it on a website that has become that really accessible point in the space of the world was very difficult. It required kind of a knowledge of coding, maybe the use of a complicated WYSIWYG program like Dreamweaver, but it really was never easy. So it was frustrating. There was a problem there, and there came along a solution, which is that here we go. Okay, the backend. The backend is when you log into a website and then have privileges that you wouldn't have unless you did so first. And we do this every day, maybe without even thinking of it. How many times a day are you typing in usernames and passwords? Well, when you do that, you're going into a place called the backend. And the backend was a solution to this problem of making a post that could be on a website. And so after logging in to a system like WordPress, you would be able to type in your title, type in your post, and submit it, and then boom, it would be on a website. At its very basic form, that was what the people who started WordPress wanted to be able to solve that problem. And this was back in 2001. We started to really see blogging, the most prominent blogging platforms evolving, starting with B2 Cafe Log, which was one of the very first blogging pieces of software. And a guy named Matt Mullenweg was very interested in B2 Cafe Log, someone who was blogging a lot and dealing with the problems that we've already seen with the issues of posting to web pages, and decided to take that B2 and make a version of it. And this is in 2003, called WordPress, because in order to continue development on it, he couldn't continue on with that B2 Cafe Log product without significantly changing things. And so we're going to get back to why that was such a, that process of development and why it's so important to be able to do those kinds of things. One thing I think that a little bit of fallout from this, what happened early, that blogging problem solving, is that WordPress has become pigeonholed as a blogging tool. And you a lot of times hear people say, oh, we can't use WordPress, that's just for blogs. And this is still lingering today. There's still people who call WordPress a blogging program. And it's not, but for whatever reason, it can't seem to shake that, that perception. So whenever people say that, I try and school them on what it can do. It can do lots of things. WordPress has, sorry, I'm just gonna scroll down here. You'd think I'd be good at this stuff, considering I teach it, but no. All right, WordPress has became over time a thing that could do more than just blogging, that it could become a full-featured CMS. And when I say CMS, that's an acronym for Content Management System, a way to manage the content that's on websites through a backend and not through coding on a computer or using a WYSIWYG editor to make web pages, but actually going into the website itself and managing it. And that's what WordPress has become all about. When I say content management is something beyond just a blog, it's important to note that the post is still prevalent in WordPress, and more so in WordPress than competing products. The post metaphor is one that you can extend into other realms of content. And we see this in the way WordPress handles other kinds of content that aren't just blog posts, but things like pages or contacts. Products that you might be selling can be considered an extension of posts. Messages that you're receiving and sending might be considered posts. And by keeping everything in this kind of hierarchy where we start with a post and then we extend outward into other kinds of content, WordPress has really built an identity as something that is very organized and a hierarchical way of structuring websites, content, and that's really what I think its core strength is. Furthermore, WordPress was built from the start as a way for people to build on it. It was introduced with lots of things called hooks. That somebody who wanted to make WordPress do something new, like this was arguing that they want to add a toothpick on there, which I think is the weirdest thing to have on a knife. But if they wanted to do that, they could do it because WordPress has been built from its core to enable people to add onto it and contribute to it that way. These things were called plugins, and plugins have been called lots of things: extensions, add-ons. WordPress called them plugins, and there's a real part of WordPress that's grown so much because of all the plugins. And lastly, that the documentation for working in WordPress was extensive, well-written, thorough, right from the start. One of the most important things about the WordPress project was to make sure that people could contribute to it and build on it. And the documentation in WordPress is beyond anything you'll find in similar products. And all these great things about WordPress, awesomeness of WordPress, yields a, I'm gonna shoot this computer. Yields this great big number of over 25%, nearly 30 now. Almost 1 out of 3 websites that we go to on the World Wide Web are running WordPress. So that's and that number continues to grow. And it's because of these things, why what WordPress has done and its foundation that has yielded this amount of growth. Not only that, but if you compare WordPress to other content management systems, which we're going to look at in a few minutes, it is over 60% of them are running WordPress. So even when you compare the other ones, WordPress is still very prevalent. So let's keep going here. This is just almost a side note, but it kind of relates to everything else that we're talking about. That one of the largest confusing things about WordPress is that people think, oh, I know what WordPress is. I have a WordPress.com account. I go to WordPress.com and I log in and I use WordPress. And they're maybe not so familiar with the other side of things, which is the .org, WordPress.org side of things. So WordPress.org is the software, and it's just a software repository where you can get WordPress. And WordPress.com is a business. It's a commercial business run by Automatic, which Matt Mullenweg's company, who I mentioned earlier, that's his business. And WordPress.com is a fully managed WordPress website hosting service. So when you have a WordPress.com account, you are using WordPress. On the other hand, you are not able to do a lot of the things that you can do with WordPress.org's software. In order to do those things, you need to run WordPress on your own website, and you can't use WordPress.com for that. My friend Andy Staple has a good analogy, but I don't think he came up with it. He says he did, but I don't think he did. It's that WordPress.org is a house, and if you have a house, you can put a fence in there, you can knock a wall down, you can do a custom jacuzzi, you can blow out anything you want, make it exactly how you want it to be, but you need to know how to do it. Whereas WordPress.com, you're basically buying a condo and you're leasing that space, and someone else has to maintain that space. They have to fix the plumbing, rewire the wiring, and that sort of thing. So you're in two different spaces, whether you're in one or the other. But a whole industry really has built up from WordPress, including, not led by the Automatic's WordPress.com site, but also lots of some companies that offer WordPress hosting, custom WordPress themes, or prepackaged WordPress themes. We call them commercial themes, plugins, things that extend WordPress and make it do the things that it doesn't currently do out of the box. Also security. So this industry is huge. That there's lots and lots and lots of companies that are making livings using WordPress and running WordPress. And so that's kind of an overview, sort of a history of WordPress and where we are today. Now, why did this happen? What made WordPress come to the top? There have been lots of other content management systems, and I've used many of them. And I've always tried to find the best tool, the one that has the most, solves the most problems that I have. And WordPress came to the top. You may have heard of Drupal, Joomla, possibly movable type, expression engine. And these are all other content management systems that allow people to use a backend to manage their content. But WordPress has come out on top. And there's a few reasons for this. When I first started looking at content management systems, I was really drawn to this guy in the bottom, movable type. Maybe it's just because I like the whole idea of printmaking, and that title appealed to me. But there was something that's very similar to WordPress and movable type in that it seemed to take branding and design into and treat that much more highly than the others did. When I looked at Drupal and Joomla, there really wasn't a lot of elegance. I mean, they were great products. They were powerful, and they could do all kinds of things. But that kind of design elegance that I'm always looking for, how do you do something in a perfect way, wasn't there. And so that's why I was really drawn to both of them. And I was using the two. Movable type eventually folded and didn't continue on. They don't really develop it anymore. But WordPress really came out on the top. And also, I just want to mention within here, this little E here, this is the expression engine, which was another content management system that was really growing at the time. But the difference there was that the expression engine was not free. You had to pay for it. And it was a commercial product. It was proprietary. And you couldn't do the things that you could do with WordPress. And this is really important because it gets to the next idea of what free means. And there's two ideas of free, and I put the couple words that one of my colleagues here probably will recognize. Okay, so if you hear open source people talking about free, you may hear the term, there's free as in speech, and there's free as in beer. And free as in speech are things that you are unregulated, that if you have something that's free as in speech, you can do whatever you want with it. And you can change it, you can say it's yours, you can make it different. And WordPress is that. You can do whatever you want with WordPress. You can look at all the source code, you can change it, you can make something new with it, call it something completely different. You can copy it and say this is, letterpress. It's a great new operating content management system, and you'd be perfectly in the legal realm to do that. Free as in beer, on the other hand, is that it's free and you don't have to pay for it. That doesn't mean that you can look and see what it's made out of, or that you are able to change it or make it something different. All it means is that it doesn't cost anything. And WordPress is both of those things. WordPress does not come at a cost. So how does it do this? This is done through the a license that WordPress comes with called the GPL. The GPL is the General Public License. I think we're on version 3 now. They changed it slightly over the years, but what the GPL says is that if you license a product that you created, like WordPress, with a GPL license, and you include that license in the software, so that people can see that that file, which explains the license, is in the same directory as the software, then anything you create with that license has to include the GPL along with it. So if I made letterpress, I would have to have the GPL in that letterpress product that I've created. If I create a plugin for WordPress, it has to include the GPL in it. If I create a custom theme, the GPL has to be in there. This does not mean that it has to be free, as in beer. It could still be, it could cost money. You can sell things that are licensed with the GPL. The only thing you can't do is release new things that don't have the GPL in it. It's a copy. The idea of GPL started with this idea of copyleft. That this is sort of the radical departure from copyright, where something belongs to you. Well, copyleft means that it belongs to everyone, and it always will. People will always be able to use it. So a very great idea, and it's one that the WordPress community really adheres to and fights for, and makes sure that GPL is something that's going to be permanent. Another reason why WordPress, and I mentioned this a little bit before, but WordPress has always had a very strong appeal to designers. And one facet of designers are those that are interested in user interface design and user experience, UI and UX. Those are buzzwords that you probably have heard if you do any web stuff, but they are important because right from the beginning, WordPress wanted to be the easiest and most useful content management system. Studies were done on how people use websites and how people, what context people are in when they're using websites, and how can we accommodate those people's needs. Different accessibility needs that people have always been at the forefront of the development of WordPress. And therefore WordPress has always attracted people that that value these things. So there has always been a strong design community backing up WordPress. And that's one of the reasons why it stands out so much from other products. Professionals are always, when WordPress is being developed, people that are professional UI UX will be charged with, responsible for making WordPress better. I think there's a major portion of WordPress in its branding. WordPress takes branding very seriously. And I mean, it's not that things are serious, but there's this cartoon character called the Wapuu, which is a symbol of WordPress. And if you compare it to the kind of symbol of Drupal, which is some strange alien ghost water droplet, I think it's much, the appeal of the characters and the feeling that it portrays, the marketing there is something that you can't overlook. And it's not just this, it's WordPress has brand guidelines. If you take a look at the WordPress brand guidelines, they're very extensive. They're really, they reinforce the use of type, color, and all these things that I teach in graphic design classes, that these are such important parts of maintaining WordPress's identity and keeping it at the forefront. WordPress has great verbiage, and these taglines, I guess you could say, almost tenets that WordPress has become known for, are really pervasive. And when we see these a lot, you see powered by WordPress on the bottom of a web page. Well, you see that over and over and over again, and you start to think, wow, this must be a good product. It's powered by WordPress. I love this idea of democratizing publishing, which was what WordPress's core was at. It was making publishing something that anybody could do, that it didn't have to become something that was in the control of people that knew how to use computers or were technically savvy. And I think it goes beyond that as well. And this is not really in the realm of this talk, but it enables people's content to exist in a disconnected and in their own space. when you're using WordPress, not necessarily WordPress.com, because that's a different story. But if you have a WordPress.site and you're posting content and you're posting pictures, they're your pictures and you own them from start to finish. When you're doing this on Facebook or Twitter or other publishing medium, it's kind of unclear as who owns that content. You know, who is that my picture now that it's on Facebook, or is it Facebook's? And there's a lot to kind of figure out behind that. Not with WordPress, it's yours. And so there's something very democratic about that. And lastly, this quote, code is poetry. That really resonated with me from the start, that they took the idea of art and text and writing seriously from a design standpoint, from an artistic standpoint. And that code was something that could be considered beautiful. So the product is always striven to be beautiful. Just a problem that's happened from all this growth of WordPress is that it has taken on a new, not only that first one I mentioned, which is that it's this blogging platform, it's also gets a bad rap for being insecure. That if you have a WordPress website, you're going to get hacked, and your site is going to start publishing spam and sending people emails, and you know it's going to get infected, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because so many sites have gotten hacked that were made in WordPress, and the number of sites that are running WordPress. We think about Microsoft Windows as the target of hackers because it is the most pervasive operating system. At least it had been. We're seeing other operating systems grow now, but same thing's happening to WordPress. It's constantly under attack. If you have a WordPress website, you know that there are robots hitting it all day long trying to get in. So if it's not secure, if it's not kept secure, it will get hacked and it will turn into a zombie website that's going to start sending out spam. So that's one of the major challenges WordPress faces, is changing its perception of something that is insecure. And I know it's not, it is secure if you follow certain rules, but I'm not going to go into those because I don't want to get off on a sidetrack. Another challenge that WordPress faces is this idea that the things people are making with them can be relicensed, are being relicensed. That somebody will make something with a GPL license that's built on WordPress and then copyright it, or put a different license on it, like an MIT license. And this breaks that continuity of that GPL, which is so important to it. So how does this, what happens if I make something with WordPress and I copyright it and I don't let anyone use that code or change it and I sell it, and I've made it basically a proprietary product using WordPress? What happens to me? Am I in trouble? Am I going to get thrown in jail? And that's not going to happen. People can do these things, and it's just unethical to do them. And one of the interesting outcomes of a lot of these there's a lot of stories behind these things happening. And what happens is, regulation has to take place somehow on some level. And there's been cases where companies that have done these things, made a product that was not GPL, have been blocked from using the WordPress.org plugin directory. And there's been a lot of back and forth and fighting and Twitter wars and so on. There's a real rich history to that if that's something that you're interested in. But the hashtag WP Drama is one that has emerged as a result of a lot of these battles that have gone on. So if you ever want to Twitter WP Drama, you will learn more about that. Another major problem, I consider this the biggest problem. And this is the idea of the baggage and the ball and chain that WordPress carries around with it. WordPress has always maintained accessibility as the number one issue for it. That people need to be able to see their WordPress websites and access them and use them, no matter what their situations are. And it's come at a cost. WordPress has always supported old versions of Internet Explorer, and WordPress has always supported old versions of PHP and MySQL, which are other technologies that are used to make WordPress run. WordPress code is filled with legacy CSS. CSS is the styles that make the websites look the way they look. And there's tons and tons and tons of spaghetti code and lots and lots and lots of old junk that's left around from former contributors that were not documented properly. And I know this for a fact because I work on WordPress, and trying to fix a lot of the CSS issues that I face are almost impossible because of the maze of code that I have to dig through. So this is one of the major issues, is getting WordPress to become modern and to kind of shake off these shackles of older technologies. And that's hard to do for not only technical reasons, but ethical reasons. Should we leave these people behind? And who are we going to find that's going to devote all this time to fixing all these problems in the code? So let's just talk a little bit about where WordPress is going, and then I'll finally finish off with the community of WordPress. There's this idea of the REST API is a big buzzword, like UI, UX, I've said before. But the REST API is something that's emerging and becoming super popular on the web. And I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on the REST API because it's a very complicated language. But what it is a language that all different apps and systems and platforms can agree upon as a common language. That if Facebook wants to talk to Google+, or Amazon wants to talk to YouTube, they can use the REST API to communicate their content to each other. And WordPress is striving to get to that point, so that the content you're publishing in WordPress will interact with the content that's published on these other platforms. And that happens through REST API. At the core of REST API is JavaScript, and especially the JSON JavaScript object notation, which, again, don't ask me about how that works because I'm not an expert in that. But I do know that at the last WP campus, I'm not sorry, WP camp, WordCamp that I went to, Matt Mullenweg, the founder of Automatic and the person who started WordPress, said that stop spending so much time learning PHP, which is the previous core language of WordPress, and start spending more time learning JavaScript, which is where the REST API lives. So all that stuff I know about PHP is going to just go out the window. But that's just the case. That's the nature of the beast with digital media. So there's another great place to look for more information about. And what this is going to enable WordPress to do by joining the party of REST API is extension into bigger and better things, using WordPress in the Internet of Things. That WordPress can, the content that's stored in WordPress can now be used by rocket ships or cars or robots, mobile devices and apps. These things can all talk to WordPress through that REST API. So that's really where WordPress is headed. Okay, so I've got a little more time. I'm trying to get through this last part quickly. Lastly, I want to talk about the WordPress community, which is another great part of WordPress and why I'm so involved. I had a student back when I first started here in 2001, Matt Puchler. He may have come in 2002. I got to get his exact details, but does anybody remember Matt, or has anyone ever heard his name? No, he was a DMA. He was one of the first digital media arts majors here at Canisius. And Matt was in my web class, and he was working on his website for the class. And I said, well, let me see the code, Matt. And it didn't look like anything I'd seen before. I had used PHP quite a bit, but this was something different. And he said, I'm using WordPress to make it. It was a site for his church. And I said, wow, WordPress is a blogging tool. So I did that thing that I hate when people do. And he was like, yeah, but you can really do a lot with it. You can make your own website and have all those WordPress powers at your disposal. And so he showed me how he did it, and we were looking through his code and his theme, and I was like blown away. I just thought, wow, this is great. Now I can use WordPress to solve all these problems that I'm having with websites. So that's how I kind of got interested in WordPress, was through a student. And after that, I used WordPress on lots and lots and lots of projects. Matt was a really, really brilliant student, and he went on to do some great things. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2010 unexpectedly. So I miss Matt. We were really good friends, and I'm really happy that I had that experience with him. But at the time, when Matt was doing that work on WordPress, this was what WordPress backend around that time, maybe a little bit later, it looked like this, very straightforward, kind of like that first blog post that I showed you, that icon of a blog post, I guess you could call it. And kind of straightforward, simple, linear. And now there was a big push around, this was around 2008, and there was a big push to make WordPress better, improve the user interface, help with the user experience of WordPress. So a contest was posted to make icons for WordPress. Basically on the WordPress.org site, an announcement went out saying we need icons for our interface. So submit your icons, and the community will vote on whose are the best, whatever that means. So I'm going to leave it to you to figure out which ones I made, but I won. I won the contest. Although somebody got second place, which I thought was kind of lame, but whatever. You can have second place, that's fine. And then my icons were used in the next version of WordPress, which was 2.7. I wish I could make this a little bigger, but the PDF has a much better view of this. Something like this. I'm like scared to click anything other than the down arrow here on this computer. All right. Yeah, so you can see the iconography that gets integrated into the admin, and it's not just here, but it's throughout the back end. There's lots of screens that use icons. Because at the time I was designing icons for other open source projects, so I was very drawn to this one, and because I had so much experience with WordPress, I really wanted to be the winner, and I was. So I got to go to San Francisco and meet with all the bigwig WordPress people. And over time, WordPress has evolved, and I've continued working on WordPress, and you can see that the icons have changed to be, to look different, and not only the way they look, but also how they're rendered has changed and is continuing to change, and that's one of my major focuses and contributions to WordPress at this point in time. Let me fix this problem. Here we go. Okay. All right. So more on the community. It's very easy to get involved with WordPress, and it doesn't matter what your background is. You could be a worker in an industry. You could be a student or a faculty or a staff at an educational institution. You could be a business person, owning a business, running a business, and you can always get involved in many different capacities. WordPress needs designers, it needs developers, it needs people to test it, it needs people to try things out and say what they like and what they don't like. And that's the only way WordPress is going to grow, is for people to volunteer. Nobody gets paid to make WordPress better. People do it as volunteers. And that's on a global level, getting involved with WordPress. There's also opportunities to get involved with WordPress on a local level. And we have a community called WP Buffalo, or the Buffalo WordPress Users Group. I've got a couple links in here to get to those two places. There's also an event coming up in July. It's wpcampus.org. It's a higher ed campus, so mainly college and higher level students and teachers and staff members and people that make and manage WordPress websites and content on campuses. So those are some ways to get involved in the local level. We meet twice a month over in Lions Hall on the first and third Thursday with students and some members of the community to talk about WordPress, to solve people's problems, to teach people how to use it. So WordPress is a very, very educational platform. People want to learn it, people need to learn it, and people do need to learn it. The demand for people to know WordPress has grown exponentially, and putting things like WordPress skills on a resume are something that are extremely valued by people that are hiring. So I think it's really important for people to learn as much as they can about WordPress, especially if they're into anything that involves web as part of their work. Okay, and I'll just stop there. It's been 45 minutes. I think that's a good run. Any questions about anything I've gone over or wasn't clear about? Happy to answer that. Come on, don't leave me hanging here. PJ.
Thanks for the fantastic presentation and your contributions. Can you tell us a little bit more why open source is important for academia, and what are the sort of implications,
Mhm.
the two sides, proprietary software, open source, and how that all plays out in our assessment?
Well, sure, yeah. The most important thing is that open source is free to use in most cases. There's that budget issue that it addresses. It's not always going to work though. So there are a lot of places where open source does not compete with proprietary and just can't. So for open source to succeed requires a commitment of volunteers that will not let it slide away. And without that, open source products don't compete. I also think it's important for academia to remain separate from corporate ties in as much as it can. And by using open source products, there's an independence that you've granted yourselves to not rely on a corporation to provide the products that you're using. And I think that that's important too. So those are the major reasons why open source would be something that we should strive to use in higher ed. But like I said, it's not always going to be the best solution. For example, I teach Photoshop, and there's an open source product called GIMP. And I've tried using GIMP. I don't want to use GIMP. GIMP is not supported enough. They need more people working on GIMP. And I don't have time. I'm so tied up with WordPress. So if I had enough time, I would start working on GIMP and try to make that thing better. But for now, and it's got such a dumb name. Like, think about what I was talking about. GIMP, come on. You guys got to fix that name. So there are some great products that they just don't have enough support. But I would like to use it. I would like to use all open source if I could. Another great example of open source is Linux. That's probably the most successful open source product in the planet. And it has only been so because of the amount of people that volunteer to make it better. And without Linux, you'd really be stuck with, Microsoft or Apple, and pick your poison. Both of them come with major baggage. So, yes, Mark?
With the cyber attacks that have happened this last week, it seems to me that people are going to be really worried about using something like this for any content that would be, in any way whatsoever libelous or secure or something. I mean, even a blog could be something where people could get arrested in some countries for. So,
Right.
I just, can you say a little bit more about, how, for example, I heard that Redmond has 3,500 people working on cybersecurity, so it's like a huge deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a major challenge is security, because as we get more cyber attacks, you're safer in a condo than you are in a house. You're putting your security in the hands of people that are paid to be to keep it. And when we're dealing with your own code, your own open source code base, your own WordPress, you're responsible for the security. And therefore, if you get hacked, you're responsible for the hack. So that's a big question. I think WordPress does a good job, and there are plugins that do a good job of preventing access. But there is a lot of vigilance that has to happen for you to make sure that your content is secure. It's just like having a house. If you live in a bad neighborhood, you better have a shotgun. Whereas if you live in a condo, you probably have the security guards that can keep the riffraff from breaking into your apartment. So that's a tough one. Any other questions? All right, I guess we can wrap it up then. Thanks a lot, guys.